think looking for me to produce his album as well. So yeah, it's still keeping busy. And we're planning to go back on the road again, but hopefully not for maybe in a year or a year and a half, because yeah, the last year was yeah, we were traveling a lot. So
Is that the longest tour that you've done?
probably the longest on time, but
And we're
not the
planning to go back on the
most
road again, but
shows.
hopefully not
Oops,
for maybe in a
oops.
year or a year and a half.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry about that.
No problem. We've done a lot of shows. I mean, we used to tour uh, back in the 90s. We would tour like we would do maybe 20 shows in a month. With we once did we did a tour once where I just saw the old tour dates the other day, and it was like marveling that we did some like 27 shows in 1 month at one point, which is like just insane. I mean, there's no way I could do that anymore. But yeah, we were just bam, 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 bam all the time for months on end. We would tour really hard, all across Europe. Uh, but yeah, we tend to like space it out a little bit more now. Uh,
Yeah, it's interesting because I find that when you're on the road for long periods of time, I feel like life becomes very singular and very
mm.
present in a way, right?
Oh, because it's a different world. I mean, it's a very dangerous world to be in because, and I found out after our first really big tour, I came back after like I think we were on the road for like 3 months, and I came back and I remember sitting in my on my couch in the front room thinking, I'm hungry now, and then not understanding that I actually had to go and prepare some food because somebody had always brought me food every day. You know, every time I was hungry, there was food there. And you know, and psychologically, it can be it's not very healthy because literally every single person you meet are there because of you, are there to do something for you. You know, you've got a tour manager who's doing something for you. You go to the venue and there's a promoter who's got stuff there for you. You've got roadies who are there to carry your stuff. You've got the audience who are there to tell you how wonderful you are. And that's wonderful. It is a great thing. It's a really great thing, but it's extraordinarily unhealthy to your ego. And so, you know, I had to keep on reminding myself, hey, you know, it's like that old Roman generals when they used to throw parades in their honor and through Rome, they would have a slave standing behind them whispering, and they would remember, you are mortal. So it was like, yeah, you got to have that voice in the back of your head going, hey, you're just a dumbass Marlin, dude. So yeah. Oh, there's a classic story from David Bowie story. You know the Ashes to Ashes video from David Bowie where he's dressed in the clown suit and he's walking along the beach. And there's a great story he would tell that when they were shooting that video, it was very early in the morning in Brighton Beach in England, and they were shooting it and they were setting everything up, and he was walking along and they were going. He's like, and we know Major Tom's a junkie, dug up in heavens, and they're just shooting it all. And they take a break from filming, and then they're going to go back again, and some old guy's walking past, walking his dog right in the middle of the camera, and they're like, "Hey, you got to get away. We're shooting a video." It's like, "No, I'm gonna live here. I'm gonna walk my dog." And then, and the guy goes, he looks at someone says, "Don't you know who this is?" And the guy looks at David Bowie sitting there in his full makeup and he goes, "Yeah, he's some cunt in a clown suit." Uh, and, uh, and David Bowie said afterwards that he thought about that every single day. No matter what happened, he was just like, he always would remind himself, "Yeah, I'm just some cunt in a clown suit." Um, yeah,
Well, how
I
do
think
you
about
stay
that a lot
grounded
too.
when how do you stay grounded or how do you recover from a tour? Like, are there ways that you go about it when you get
That's
back?
that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Try and do, go out and work in the garden and do the dishes and do like normal stuff. I think it's actually important. Hang out with my friends, play video games online, get pawned by some 16-year-old kid, uh, um, and things like that. I think are really important. Uh, I mean, it's great to be a rock star, as you well know, I'm sure. But yeah, it's important to keep a sense of proportion.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that the routine like really helps in terms
Mm,
of staying
yeah,
grounded.
absolutely. Well, you've
Yeah.
got to break that routine of like when you're on tour. Well, it's almost like a very, very mild form of PTSD because when people who get PTSD frequent, like when soldiers come back from war, they used to think they got PTSD because of all the horrors they saw, but they couldn't figure out why some people got it really badly and some people didn't. And then they realized that actually a lot of the people who got PSD came from very traumatic homes, home environments. And in fact, what was triggering a lot of the PTSD was not the fact that they'd seen all these horrors of war. It was the fact that during the war, they had people around them who they could depend on. They had a very structured environment, like 24/7. They knew what they were doing, they knew where they were. And then when they were thrown back into having to depend on themselves into the normal world, that was what was really triggering a lot of the trauma. So I think there's a very, I don't want to like say that's happens, but it's a very, very mild kind of thing. It's like when you're on tour, everything is structured. You have a big book before you leave, where you're going to be, what you're going to be doing. I know it like 1:15 in the afternoon on the 23rd of July. I know exactly where I'm going to be and what I'm going to be doing. And there's no real decision making anymore. You're just there, and you have your own support network around you. When you're touring with your band, it's like it becomes like an extended family in a sense. And then when you lose all that and things are just back to normal everyday stress, that can be very difficult to cope with, uh, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's funny, I call it like the post-tour
Yeah, post-tour
traumatic
blues.
syndrome. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Post-tour
it's a
blues. Yeah.
very real thing. It's a very, very
Yeah.
real thing for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting because I myself on tour don't get that much sleep. Um,
Yeah, really.
yeah. And I'm sure for you, especially with going from country to country, there's a lot of jet lag that's going on as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I was once jet lagged for 2 years, like
wow.
literally 2 years
Wow.
long. I didn't sleep. I didn't have a decent night's sleep for 2 years. I ended up in the hospital. It was just horrific. It was very physically stressful. But yeah, there's not a lot of sleep, but there's a lot of excitement and fun. So, it balances out. I still love
It
it.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you say that like touring in your early career versus touring now, like have you just sort of learned along the way? Or was it something that you kind of intuitively knew like how to I guess sustain yourself? Because I feel like there's
Mm.
some people that just get burnt out on touring.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and I've been burned out. So I mean, we had to learn a lot, and there's very little there's very little there's very little literature on how to go touring, the dummy's guide to rock and roll. Though there is a great book now called Tour Smart by Martin Atkins. I don't know if you know this book. Wonderful book. I
yeah.
mean, Martin's a really great guy. I love him to death. And his book Tour Smart should be compulsory reading for anybody going on a tour. It's brilliant. um, and yeah, and I mean, one of the things we learned was, and I think this is going to come as a shock to a lot of people out there, is one of the rules that we have of the road is no drugs, no alcohol. I just don't allow drugs and alcohol at all anymore. And for most, I'm sure the musicians out there going, wait, what? But that became a really big deal for us because people were just, after every show on the rider, you're like, here, 2 bottles of whiskey, a couple of bottles of vodka, go away, drink it all. And people would. And, do that for 3 months, every day for 3 months, and you're not going to be able to function. And that's what happened. So we ended up like being very strict and saying, this is a workplace, this is our work. We have to survive. We have to be healthy. And so we started eating very healthy, and on the rider and making sure we had comfortable places to sleep and stuff like that. Because it rapidly, having a nice hotel bed is not a luxury. It becomes a necessity after a while because you do need to sleep when you can. And so we started becoming a lot more careful in what we were doing. Um, because I saw too many people get seriously burned out or end up in rehab, and it's not fun.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Mm.
And I feel like the enjoyment factor goes up when you feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It feels good to feel good.
Yeah. I think you can sometimes get used to being in a certain state,
Mm.
and sometimes you don't know what that feels like. But when you discover that, I think it's one of those things where you're like, why would I go back?
Mm.
So yeah. Um, I was wondering, because I myself have never played any shows in Europe. We
Wow,
played,
you're really
yeah.
missing out. It's so much better than the USA, trust me.
What would you say is better? Like, what are the differences?
Um, well, certainly for the genre and the vague genre thing that we exist within, that gothic, industrial, alternative, post-punk, whatever you want to call it, scene is much more professional in Europe than it is here, especially in Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, Scandinavia. It's a much, much more professional scene, and there's many, many, many more people willing to go out there and spend their money on you and come to see your shows. And it's a much more relaxed atmosphere. I mean, I mean, with the Cassandra Complex, we never really did that well in the USA. So I'm prejudiced. We never had a breakthrough there like we had in European countries. Um, but here, I always find it like here it very much reflects the the wider political and economic idea that there are some people at the very high top, and then there's an awful lot of people at the very low bottom, and there's very little in between. So if you're doing any kind of alternative and strange and experimental anything, that getting from there to there is almost impossible. It's really difficult. And it always has been, but that's even more exaggerated now than it ever was before. And that's also happening in other places. But in Europe, there's much more of a middle ground that you can inhabit. I mean, you can make a living without being a superstar. And here, that's almost impossible. And it's still very difficult in Europe as well. But like, and like things like the festival circuit. I mean, in Europe, you've got so many great festivals. You get a festival like we have Gothic Treff in Leipzig that happens every May, and that's got like 30,000 goths take over the entire city. And it's not just like a stage in a field somewhere or whatever. Like literally, some Wave Gothic Treff is the whole city. Every venue in the city, from the smallest pub to the State Opera House, is running goth industrial shows like all day long for a long weekend. And all the public transport is free. All the taxis are playing. Are playing Sisters of Mercy or Front 242 when you get in a cab. It's a whole experience. You don't get that here. I mean, you just don't. Now, having said that, Latin America's got a fabulous scene. Latin America is really vibrant and exciting. I mean, we just came back from Mexico, Costa Rica, Chile, Brazil. All those places we were selling out shows. Here we can barely get 50 people in a dog. So Latin America is really great. They have a fabulous scene there, amazing people.
Yeah, I've heard amazing things.
Mm,
Um, you know, and I've seen pictures and videos as well. So definitely a dream on the bucket list
mm.
for sure.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you guys should definitely try and get to Europe, do some festivals over there.
Yeah,
Let's
we would
talk.
love to.
I'll help you
Yes.
out.
Yes. That'd be amazing. Yeah, no, it's so inspiring to hear about other places in the world that have such support. you know,
Mm,
for this kind of music, I guess. Music
right.
on the fringes. I don't even know how to describe it, but yeah.
Whatever it is we do, yeah.
Yeah.
We know what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yes. That's really amazing. So going back to the origin story,
Hmm.
you were in Leeds,
Hmm.
and playing around Europe,
Hmm.
and then you came to the US.
Hmm. Yeah, I live in LA right now.
Hmm. And so like when you're playing in the US, are there places like that you particularly enjoy playing, like larger cities, or have you tried some of like the smaller?
Oh, I think we've only ever played like maybe 10 dates in the US in our entire career.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
on the last tour we did the Coalways Festival in Chicago, which was obviously great.
Yeah.
That's a great festival, and Jason and Kelly who run that are great people, and they've done so much for the scene, and it was really fun to play that show, and people loved it. It was really gratifying. It was the only big show we've ever done in the US. Everything else has just been small clubs, like we played in Portland and Long Beach, and we played in Berkeley, I think, as well, a couple of other places. And in the past, we've done New York, we did Minneapolis. But honestly, I don't really care. I mean, the one thing I've learned in touring around the world multiple times is everybody's the goddamn same no matter where you go. Um, there's 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 small cultural differences, but people are people, and it's always great. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. When you come to the show and you love my music, it's like, yeah, what could, you know, that's all that counts. Really. So I couldn't possibly say that one is better or more interesting or better than the others. Um, and the other thing is like, one thing I used to hate when we first started, people would be like, I'd play a festival, whatever, and you see a band come out going, oh man, that was a shit audience. And I'd be like, no, I mean, they paid good money to come to your show. Um, Anyone who pays money to come to my show, I mean, if you can't go out there and entertain them when they've already bought a ticket, then that's your problem. No one comes to a show wanting to have a bad time. And if you can't give them a good time, then you're to blame. The musician, not the audience. So there's no such thing as a bad audience. There's only people who don't know how to do their job properly. And I take that really seriously. So and so when I'm on that stage, I do feel as ridiculous as it might sound, I feel it's my duty to make sure that everybody there is that I'm emotionally touching every person in the audience. Because if I'm not, then I'm not doing my job.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely feel the same. Like it really doesn't matter like
Mm,
audience size at all.
right? No, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. It doesn't matter if I'm playing to 10 people or 10,000 people; they'll still get the same show.
Yeah. Absolutely. I was curious. I saw this really amazing video. I have not gotten to experience the Cassandra Complex live yet, but I saw this beautiful live video. I think you were in Germany, and it was incredible, like seeing the lighting and
The
I was
lasers.
wondering, yes,
Mhm.
yes,
Yeah.
was that programmed by you or
Hmm.
was there? Wow.
Yeah, we have we have our invisible member Martin, who's been with us for 37 years or something now. He does our lighting on our video show. Paul and I programmed the videos that are running in the background. So we always have because right now we changed the lineups change the live lineup changed a lot over time. Right now it's just two of us on tour most of the time, which is and when we first started thinking of just going on stage with two of us, I'm like, this is going to be so boring watching two guys just stand there with some synthesizers. It's like the most boring thing in the world. So we've got to make it more interesting. So we have a big video screen and we program all the videos are programmed for every song and they're all queued up it's and then we have a, our normal lighting rig, but we also have a bunch of lasers as well We went to see Hawkwind, who are still on tour, one of my favorite bands from the 70s. They're still on tour. And Paul and I saw them in England about a year and a half ago. And they had these, and we were like, we need this. We need the psychedelic. We've got to go completely psychedelic. So we went out and bought a bunch of lasers, which was not cheap, and then programmed them all up. So we take all that with us. And so, yeah, when we do the shows, especially, I mean, in Germany, when we played the USA, we didn't because we just couldn't afford to bring the lasers over. It was so expensive. Um, but when we're playing in Europe, yeah, we have all the time because we want to make sure people get a really, really impressive show, and you get your money's worth when you come to see the Cassandra Complex. Yeah, it's seriously over the top show. So we have all the lasers bouncing around all the time. We have the huge videos running, and we run around. I run around a bit too. So, but yeah, but yeah, we want to make sure. I mean, I go to so many shows, and it's like just a bunch of people standing there going, it's like they look like they're washing their car or something. And it's like, I'm not interested in watching that. You know,
Yeah, I've heard that said before. That if I wanted to just listen to the album, I would listen to the album. But when I go to a
right,
show, I want
exactly,
to see a
yeah.
show. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to take a moment to say hello to our friends in the stream. Thank y'all so much for joining us. And K Mags, by the way, says hello, Rodney. Um,
Hey.
and Nevermore is saying that they love the scene in Latin America. That's awesome.
Mm.
Would definitely love to go there as well. Um, yeah, so I was wondering, like, when you have thought of the visual show, like, is that something like, again, like what kind of a show did you have like 40 years ago in the beginning?
Ironically, not all that different than we have now, just much cheaper. No, from the beginning, we were very interested in multimedia. And in fact, the very first shows we ever did in Leeds weren't even advertised as the Cassandra Complex. We used to do um, these big multimedia events that would like go on for like the whole day or whatever. And we would have very early analog video technology and all sorts of weird things, and we would have other artists and video makers uh, come along and do lots of interesting stuff. So you never knew what you were going to get. We'd have at least 3 or 4 acts running that were all sorts of different things, and we did these incredible sort of performance art things, and we did that. That was how we started. We did that for quite a long time, and then eventually because that was just we couldn't take that kind of thing on tour, especially back then because the technology each show took us weeks to prepare, and we couldn't really tour it. And so we started getting more rock and roll. We became more of a standard rock and roll band. We had guitar. We had a couple of guitar players in the band, and so we became much more of a traditional rock act in our performances or in the music kind of thing. So we've kind of gone back. One of the reasons why we did this 40th anniversary tour the way we did is because we went back around to just Paul and I, the two founder members, and doing this kind of multimedia show. And we did a lot of the very early material. And we've even just been collecting up some of the old synthesizers and things we had back in the early days, and a lot of it now we have software versions of it that we've programmed. And so it's like we're redoing almost, we wanted to recapture how we started and have that vibe, but transmuted through the 40 years of experience in between. Uh, so, so yeah, it's very much actually still the original philosophy of the band made manifest now through what we have available nowadays. So
So for a band starting out, that's
don't.
inspiring to know.
When people come to me and say, what's the best, what's advice you can give for a young band starting out? My usual advice is don't. Um, uh, it's a terrible thing. Go and do something more useful with your life. um, which usually means that if you got disheartened by me saying don't do it, then you shouldn't be doing it. But if you go, fuck you, Rodney, I'm going to do it anyway, then maybe that's the right attitude. I don't know. I used to
Yeah.
I've taught music technology in college. I was Professor Rodney for a while, and I remember when I had my first class of students, and I came in for the first day. They'd already been studying for a year. I was doing the second year, or the final year of their school, and to get to know them, I said, okay, you've got a week to make me a piece of music. I want everybody in this class to make a piece of music in the class for a whole week. All we'll do is make music. You can collaborate, you can work on different things. I just want to know, I want you to do, have something that's recorded acoustically, something that's recorded electronically. I want some keyboards, I want to see how varied and useful you are. And at the end of the week, we spent a day going, everyone would present their work and play their music back and talk about how they did it and so on. So, and the whole class went through the last day. Everyone presented their work, played their music. We talked about it, and I'd be like, yeah, and then at the end of the day, they were like, so what do you think? And I'm like, well, and I gave them a sum up, and I said like, yeah, John, there, you had a great song. The song was pretty good, nice guitar playing, drum program wasn't. Yeah, I'll go through and at the end I said, yeah, I'm very pleasantly surprised in the fact that you're all making very good, interesting music that I enjoy. What the fuck is wrong with you? And they were like, what? And I'd be like, you guys are like 18, 20 years old. You should be making music that I hate. You should be making music that I don't understand. Don't make this bullshit that somebody who's old enough to be your parents would like. What the fuck is wrong with you? And they were all like, whoa. But it's, it's true.
That's some wisdom.
Hmm.
Actually, I'm gonna segue a bit. We had a question from It's All Good 49 on Instagram who was asking, how do you start an album?
How do you start an album? Yeah. Yeah, it's only topped by the question of how do you finish it? How do you start an album? Well, that's a really interesting question, actually. And I'm still, after 40 years and many, many albums for myself and other people, I'm still not quite sure I understand the question or the answer. Um, how do you start an album? I mean, the question is, do you want to make an album in the first place? I didn't make any albums for a whole decade. I didn't make a record at all because I wasn't even sure what an album means anymore. In the age of streaming, does an album even make any sense? Um, you know, um, if you look at the statistics, from someone like Spotify, most people, and by far most, by most, I mean by far most people, never make it past halfway through an album. Most people will listen to, if you listen, and I'm sure you've seen this if you look at your own streams, the first two or three songs on the record will get a lot more streams than the last on the record. And it's not just because the first tracks on the record are necessarily better, but most people just don't have the patience to go listen to something for 40 minutes anymore. Most people listen to music while they're driving to work or when they're on the bus or, doing the housework or whatever they're doing. And usually that doesn't take longer than 20 or 30 minutes. So does it even make sense to make a 1 hour long record when no one's ever going to get to the end of it? I used to make records where I would love albums that were like, 40 minutes or an hour long. And the last 10 minutes was one giant long epic opus of a song. And I made records like that where I would have this huge culminating epic thing at the end of the record. And then I realized that no one's going to listen to it. So I'm not even sure that making an album is a good idea anymore. We still sell CDs, but that's probably because most of our fans are not 20 years old anymore. So that's the first question you asked it. Do I really want to make an album? And what does that album even mean? Is it a thing? I love big, massive concept albums like you got in the 70s, prog rock concept albums. Like, Yes's Tales from Topographic Ocean is like the double album with 4 songs on it, each one 20 minutes long. Fabulous. I love that grandiosity of a record. But does it make any sense to do that these days? In the age of streaming, in the age of TikTok, I mean, does that even make sense anymore? Um, so you got first thing you got to ask yourself is, what's my artistic intention in this? What am I actually trying to create? And I don't make an album just for the sake of making an album. What are you trying to get across? What are you trying to transmit? What is the artistic package, and what audience are you trying to get to, and what are you trying to say to them? That's for me the questions I ask myself, which is probably sounds a bit philosophical and pretentious or whatever, but it's true. You've got to see yourself. What do I want to do here? Sometimes it may just be you want to make like a 2-minute pop song. Bam, done. Do it. Have it out tomorrow. You can do that if you want. Maybe you want to make like a symphony. Okay, do that. I mean, but don't make an album just because. I mean, an album is a thing. I mean, the album only existed because the technology was there to transmit it. Albums, like the Yes record had 4 20-minute songs because when they made it, the only way to transmit it was on a vinyl record, and each vinyl record could only hold 20 minutes on the side. Do you know why the CD is 70 minutes, holds 70 minutes of music? You ever know that? No. Well, when they originally prototyped the CD at Philips in Holland, they made it 1 hour long. And then they were talking to the Sony because they wanted to do a joint venture making the CD between Philips and Sony. And the head of Sony's favorite Mahler symphony was 69 minutes long. So he said, can we not make it 70 minutes long so I can hear my favorite Mahler symphony? And they were like, yeah, I guess so. And that's why the CD is 70 minutes long. It's designed to transport that one piece of music that's that long. We're not limited by that transport technology anymore, because the transport technology now is this thing you're watching right now. So you can do whatever you want. That's a really long way of not answering the question, I guess.
No, I think we're all on the journey with you.
Right.
Yeah, no, it actually makes perfect sense. I think um essentially like going back to the why, like really
Mm.
going like why am I, wanting to create
Yeah.
that?
Why do I make CDs anymore? Well, because every time we tour, people come to the merchandising booth and say, I would really like to buy a CD. And that's why we still make CDs. For the longest time, I was thinking maybe we just don't make any more CDs at all, but people ask for them. So that's why we do it. Otherwise, I would be doing I don't know what the hell I'd be doing. I'd be doing something else.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you have a couple of albums on deck.
Mhm.
Are they ones that are conceptual, or is it more like you're thinking of different themes that you're
I
um
I I hate talking about work in progress. I never
okay.
talk about work in
Yeah.
progress. And the reason for that is that the moment I verbalize it, it loses some of its own mystique in my own head, if you like.
Mm,
And the moment, and it's the same reason why I never let people come to watch us rehearse. I mean, we never let anybody else in the room when we're rehearsing, because the moment they step in the room, I automatically go into, hey, look at me, I'm a rock star mode, and and I automatically start playing to the audience. And but when I'm actually writing and recording, I don't want to play to an audience's preconceptions. I want to do this thing that's inside me and let it out in the most pure way possible, I guess. Um, and it took me a long time before I could even let people hear demos or rough mixes of my songs. I mean, normally I would wouldn't even do that. These days, I do let my close friends hear some rough mixes and get their feedback, because I think probably because I'm stable enough in my own head, and I trust my own process enough so that I can take that feedback and not let it veer me off course, I guess. But for the longest time, I didn't even like doing that. So,
I understand that.
mm,
It is interesting because I feel like the act of songwriting is such a subconscious
mm,
act, right? And
yeah.
and you are digging in the ethers, and
Hmm.
it's
Yeah,
very
right.
reflective. Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, and I mean, I remember once going around to some very famous musician's house whose name I will not mention. And I was waiting for him I was hanging out at his house and he was like late and I was like, I had a half an hour to kill in his living room. And I started looking through his book collection because that's what you do when you're in someone else's house, right? You always look through the book collection. And I was picking books out of his book collection. He opened up and I noticed like there were whole passages all, highlighted. And I realized that some of the things that were highlighted were had appeared in lines of his songs. And I'm like, oh, okay, I see how he writes his songs. And I think to a lot of people, when they write a song, that's literally what they're doing. They're going like, well, what's going to sound good here? And that's never been interesting for me. When I write a song, it has to be what's in here, and it has to just come out. So it has to have a truth and an authenticity of my lived experience. I mean, just not a line that sounds good, or I love you, you love me, we're so happy. That's not interesting. Probably
No,
because
not at
it's
all.
probably the reason why I don't sell so many records.
Well, I think that like you were saying, like you really do how it comes down to speaking your truth, and that's what
Right.
I think
Mm.
lends itself to longevity.
Right. I agree.
Because yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, I feel like you do if you stand behind what you've created, it can stand the test of time.
Mm. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, and that's always been something that's been very important to me that I do want to make something that will stand the test of time, something that can outlive even me, something, and I'm very proud personally, when I listen back to some of my older records and they still sound like, still go, wow, that's a great record. And that's something I feel that gives me a great deal of personal satisfaction. And that I stuck to that authenticity and that truth of who I am and what I am and made that. And also not just like from an ego point of view, quite the opposite. Um, because it's like, you know, one of the rarest and most wonderful things in the world is when someone really understands you, when someone really understands your emotions and really feels what you're feeling, and when you have that connection with them. And one of the things I love about playing live, especially, is that I can do that with hundreds and hundreds of people. And I can look in the audience and see, someone with a tear running down their face because they understand what I'm feeling. And that is a really special and important thing, um, to have that emotional connection. And the fact that we can do that with so many different people is a truly wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You were saying something earlier that made me think about the fact that music is so universal and
Mm,
it really does, reflect the human experience, I think.
absolutely.
Yeah. And when you have the courage to share an expression that you've written and other people can connect to it, it's like you bring them inside you in a way.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I don't know. I think that's something as you were sharing about traveling to different countries, that really doesn't matter if you're speaking different languages.
No,
Um,
not at all.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I find that, well, even within the U.S., every state is like its own country,
Yeah,
and
really.
it has its own culture. And I do find that the music is universal. It's just all
Mm,
about the expression of the human experience. That's it.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I do love that in your use of um, technology, because you could choose to go, I guess, I don't, for lack of a better word, like in the more robotic direction where you couldn't be understood, right, if you chose, but you put an emphasis on your lyrics,
Mm.
And so your voice is heard, and you can really hear the words in your
Mm.
recordings. And I think that really does make a difference in really connecting to the music, is really hearing the voice and hearing the words.
Yeah, well, I'd like to think that my voice is worth listening to, but
Yeah.
unlike some other bands in this genre that I can think of, no, yeah, I mean, I like to sing. Hopefully, I've got people like my voice, I think. So,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, though mixing the band when you're the singer is like one of the hardest things in the world because it's really hard to decide how loud to make the vocals. You must know this. It's like the hardest thing in the world because you want the music to be really powerful, but yet you want people to hear you. And I spent so much time, and also like everybody, I'm sure everybody watching this now, whether you're a musician or not, has that moment when the first time you hear your recorded voice played back to you, and going, "Holy shit, is that me? Oh my God, that's horrible." Um, yeah, imagine that for every day for the rest of your life. So it took me a long time to be able to hear my own voice without cringing. And it's still, that's still probably the hardest part of making a record for me is trying to mix my own voice. Um, it's a really extremely difficult uh, issue for me, but I kind of learned how to do it, I think now. But
Is it collaborative within this Cassandra Complex, or are
I,
you the one making
yeah, I
music?
know I like to collaborate. I mean, um, we have a saying in the Cassandra Complex. The great thing about the Cassandra Complex, you can take any member of the Cassandra Complex and put them in any studio anywhere in the world and give them any instrument, and they still won't be able to play it correctly. Uh, um, um, we all do everything really, except for that I'm the only vocalist. Um, it's a very collaborative experience, and even though I there are some songs that I've written alone, very few, but some, um, and I could make the records on my own if I really wanted to, but I don't really want to. I like to collaborate. I like to have that feedback coming from someone else where they go, wait a minute, hang on, I could do this. And you're like, wow. And then, like I may have 90% of a song written, and then Paul or Andy or one of the other musicians in the band will come up with this amazing top line melody or this weird little sequence in the background that suddenly adds that extra level of brilliance to it. And those moments are what I live for. I love that experience. So I really love to collaborate. I love to work with other people who are inspirational and have can add something to it and make it better. It's a wonderful thing. And it stops you getting too egotistic as well. Um, it's always good to have someone to go like, and it's also good when I can do something that, those moments when you're like awake at 3 o'clock in the morning and you've done something utterly amazing, and then the next day you wake up and your bandmate goes, Jesus, that sucks. That's also really important too.
Yes, yes, your bandmates definitely keep you in check, that's for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I am a band girl myself. I
yeah,
absolutely love being in a band. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Well, so you mentioned having kind of different members throughout the,
Hmm.
life of the Cassandra Complex. Um, do you end up collaborating with different people as they come in and out, or is it really dependent on like
Oh yeah. Well,
the
I mean, we've had the core of the band has remained the same from the beginning, which is amazing after all this time. I mean, I still find it incredible that Paul and I are still making music together after like this huge amount of time, um, and all the stuff that's happened, life things that have happened in between, because there are other things that happen outside of the band. Obviously, you gotta people have jobs and families and stuff. Life happens. Um, but we've kept it pretty much the core of Paul and myself and Andy Booth, who plays guitar for us. He doesn't tour with us at the moment, but um, And the other thing is that, we're very much a cottage industry, which I know it's what you guys do as well. For us, right from the beginning, it was really important to be truly independent. We've never had a manager, anything like that. We manage ourselves. We record our own records. We have our own studio. We do our own productions, marketing, everything we do ourselves. Um, and so from a very early, right from the beginning, we decided that we would learn other things rather than just being musicians. And that's actually been really useful and really important. And I truly recommend anybody who wants to be a musician is don't just be a musician, be something else as well. So I was very interested in the technology and the recording. So I became the producer. I produced lots of other bands. I ended up just helping to design technology. And that's my other career, if you like. Andy, for example, he did all our business work and he ended up doing a law degree because he got so tired of us being ripped off on contracts. So he did a law degree and became a lawyer. And now he's the lawyer for New Order and Johnny Marr and the Pixies. And, you know, that's what he does. He's a very well-known music business lawyer. And Axel, who played with us for a long time on keyboards, he did all the live sound stuff, and now he does the live. He then had a career as a live sound mixer for bands like, I don't know, And One, Project Pitchfork, Beaver and Baton. He did the live sound for all those guys. So we've been involved in this scene in the background, like all the way across the scene. There's very few um, parts of it that we haven't touched in some way. And I think that's been really important for us. Um, and so, and as people have and other people have come in and out of the band over the years and written with us and worked with us, but so it's become more of a sort of a floating collective of people. But again, like Chris Haskett, who played guitar on the last album, Death and Sex, Chris, we knew when we first started. When we very first started, he was an American guitar player who was studying in Leeds University. So he came to our very first shows and hung around with us. But he was playing with another band at the time, so he never played with us. But we were really close. So when he had time, he did some work with us. But he also ended up joining Henry Rollins' band, and he was the guitar player for Henry Rollins for many years. And then he did some work with some obscure English singer called David Bowie, and played guitar for him. And now he plays for us. So it's like, hey, great. But we've known Chris for 40 years as well, so it's a wonderful thing. And yeah, but I don't like the idea. I never use session musicians or someone like that. I mean, I've got computers that can do that. But I like having people in there that get the music, that understand it and want to be part of it. And so it's
Yeah.
always been that way. So,
Yeah, it makes a huge difference when you
mm.
find, I guess, kindred spirits. That's a
Yeah,
maybe,
absolutely.
yeah,
Kindred
yeah,
spirits.
yeah, absolutely. I think that um, it's like they truly connect with the music. And so when you play together, it is magic. It really
Mm,
is. It's an
absolutely.
alchemy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. Have you ever like thought about like well, okay, so I feel like being a technologist, you are a forward thinker. I think technologists, it's like science fiction, I think, in a way
Hmm.
where you
I'm a
imagine
huge science
things.
fiction fan.
Same.
Mm.
Yeah. Have you ever like envisioned like different instruments, like playing around with it? I know you can do a lot on synths, so it's like you create so much sound and soundscapes with
Mm.
synths, but
Hmm.
beyond that, I don't know.
I'll use anything. I mean, we've
Yeah.
used all sorts of stuff. Everything. I mean, I had one of the very early guitar synthesizers, for example. I bought an EMS Synthy Hi-Fi in a junk store for 55 UK pounds, and it was the very first guitar synthesizer ever made. They made like just like a few hundred of them. David Gilmour from Pink Floyd had one. So all those amazing Pink Floyd soundscapes on guitar were done with one of those synthesizers. Big difference being, of course, that Dave Gilmour can actually play, unlike me. But that was a wonderful thing, and I used that a lot on our Cyberpunx record, and to do these like things that you couldn't normally do on a guitar. And that was really fun. Eventually I sold it for $5,000, but because I'm a terrible guitar player, I sold it to someone who could actually play the guitar. But yeah, I mean, I love playing around with anything like that. I mean, I I mean, and I love doing like really, interesting ambient soundscapes and stuff like that. And we churn out a lot of that. Most of it never actually sees the light of day, but actually I want to do an ambient album or two or three sometime soon. Paul and I keep talking about that. Someday it will happen. I mean, I worked with for a while with a band called The Future Sound of London. I don't know if you've heard of them. Amazing, sort of somewhere between ambient and techno band in England. And I did a surround sound record with them that was amazing. I mixed it in surround sound, 5.1 surround sound, with Robert Fripp on guitar, and that was a fabulous thing to do. It was really interesting electronic soundscapes, and it was all surround. And being able to take Robert, if you know what Robert Fripp's guitar sounds like, these like really long. I mean, he's the original ambient guitar player. He and Brian Eno did. There's a great record called North Star, and a one called No Pussyfooting, which is really one of the very first ambient records with Robert Fripp and Brian Eno. So I was taking a lot of Fripp's guitar and just being able to pan it around all the way right round and meld it in with all this other stuff. And that was a beautiful experience. I love doing that one. Um, that was really good.
That sounds amazing. I actually could literally see it. I don't know, future thinking, but in some performed in some kind of a
Hmm.
dome with
Yeah,
visuals.
right. I mean, one of my favorite shows we ever did was we played once on Christmas Day, I think, at the Edmonton Space Center in Canada, and we played in the big dome with all the visuals projected on the ceiling, and we had 28 speakers in a circle around the outside of the audience, and we played in the middle, and it was
Oh,
marvelous. I remember Andy saying at the beginning, so like he said, if you have any good drugs, take them now. And there was a voice from the audience said, "Don't worry, man, we're way ahead of you." Um, so I spent most of that show lying on my back, just looking at the stuff above us, going like, "Wow." So yeah, that was a great show.
that sounds next level.
Mm.
Hopefully that can happen again because I would like to go to one of these
Yeah,
shows.
that's actually a really good idea. Hmm. Well, I was last year in LA. I actually was negotiating with the LA Public Library to do a live soundtrack to Nosferatu in the library, and that would have been great. But didn't get a chance to. Maybe next year, we'll see.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I love seeing movies with live soundtracks
Mm.
happening.
One of the
Definitely a
best,
fan.
one of the best shows I ever saw in my life was Philip Glass and the Kronos Ensemble were doing a live soundtrack to Bela Lugosi's Dracula, and that was
Wow.
that was amazing. And they had the orchestra behind the screen, the huge screen, the orchestra behind the screen, and then they had underfloor lighting that would come up, and so at moments during the movie, you could just see in the background these shadowy figures playing the soundtrack. It's
Oh my
magnificent,
gosh.
magnificent show.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Mm.
Well, planting seeds for the library for next year
Let's
because
see.
yes.
Mm.
I will buy a ticket to this. Yeah, so I was wondering like when you were starting out with playing live, did you do all the booking yourself? You mentioned being
Um,
self-managed.
at our very first shows that we did in and around Leeds, we did all that ourselves because we were doing these big art events. But then after we did our second single, Moscow, Idaho, I happened to be in the studio one day. I was actually just going to the bathroom and the phone rang, which was unusual because we didn't even, we just bunkered down in there and had no communication with the outside world. And I happened to just hear the phone, which I never heard normally because I would have a bunch of synthesizers going bop, 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 all the time, you know. I'd never hear the phone ring, but I just happened to be going to the bathroom. And I picked up the phone and was like, hey, hello, this is Ruud from Holland. We would like you to play in Holland. And I was like, what? Okay. Because we'd put out a record. We put out two 12-inch singles on our own. And the distribution company had ordered more records where they were selling them, but we had absolutely no idea who was buying these records. Now, and the distribution company were continually surprised that they. So I'm like, "You want us to play in Holland?" And he's like, "Oh yes, we would like to." And I said, "Why?" And I'm like, "Why?" Because no one in the UK cared about us. We couldn't get a show to save our lives. And he said, "Oh, so, you know, your record is very big here in the clubs." And I'm like, "No, I didn't know that." He's, "Oh yes, so we would like to. Do you have another agent?" And I'm like, "No." And he was like, "Can I be your agent?" And I'm like, "Sure, man." And that's how it started. And it was just like completely by chance. I didn't even know he had got my phone number through the distribution company and tracked us down and managed to get in touch with us and said, "Oh yeah, we want to come to Holland and play." And I remember the first show he booked us in Germany, in Hamburg, in Germany, and we had no idea what the hell was going on. And we were playing in this little tiny club in Hamburg that held like 350 people, and if that, and that was like sardines. And we were sound checking, and then after the sound check, we'd traveled overnight from Holland, and we were said, "Let's go back to the hotel and clean up." So we went back to the hotel, freshened up a bit, and then we were driving back to the venue, and there was a huge demonstration in the street. We were like, "Oh my God, what's going on here? It's like a riot or something." It's like the whole street was full of people. The cars were, there was a traffic jam and everything. We were like, and Keith, who was drawing for us, I said, like, maybe they're here to see us. We were all like, we were all rolling around in the car like at this thought. And then we pulled up and we were like, wait a minute. And they were there to see us. There were 1,000 people in the street trying to get into a 350-seater venue, a capacity venue. And we were like, holy shit, this is unbelievable. Like, wow, we had no idea. And we were like, look at us, we're rock stars now. So we got out of the car and we walked over to the venue and we're trying to get in. And people were like, get back in the line, because nobody knew what we looked like. So we were stuck outside our own show for like nearly an hour because no one would let us in the line. We couldn't get in because I'm like, I'm the singer. Like, yeah, sure you are, mate. You know, get to the back of the line. And so that was like, oh, okay. Being a rock star is, I can't even get in my own show. And eventually we only got in because the promoter was inside the venue, like, where the hell is the band? And the promoter came out like having a total panic attack because he'd lost us. And we were in the middle of the street with 1,000 other people. So
That's amazing.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so we do have an agent, and we work with an agent all the time. And that's pretty much the only third party person we work with. We also work with we work with a record company in San Francisco, Cop International. A German guy called Christian Petke runs that label. Very, very good label. And again, we could do that ourselves, but I just don't have the time and the energy to worry about getting CDs pressed. And so I just let Christian do that, and it's fine. And we have an agent who's our agent currently is a German lady called Sabina Waltz, who's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and she does Frontline Assembly and Laibach, the Cassandra Complex, and a bunch of other bands. And she's great because she knows all the venues, she knows what she's doing, she's really energetic and doesn't take shit from anyone, and she works hard for her money, and that's wonderful. So Sabina does all our work in most of Europe, and then we have an agent in Latin America who handles all Latin American stuff as well, and that does make a lot of sense. I mean, I think you book your own shows, right? Yeah, and
Yep.
well, respect, lady, because that is a tough job. That is the toughest job in rock and roll, in my opinion, by far. So Yeah, I definitely prefer having an agent for that position that we can get an agent, and that's not easy at all anymore. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a testament to your music and the fact that people connect to it because,
Mm,
like you were saying, your agent first reached out to you because you were doing so well. And it definitely shows like there's all these people that want to hear and experience your music live.
right. Yeah, and but on the other hand, and like yeah, and so half of me goes, yeah, look at me, I'm brilliant. An agent called me out of nowhere. I didn't have to go find one. I'm so cool. But on the other side, half of me is like, what happened if I didn't want to go for a piss when that phone rang? You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah.
he was like, I've been trying to call you for months. I don't and that might never have happened. And then I'd be working in a McDonald's. Um, so, a lot is to do with just being in the right place at the right time. And you've got to make sure you're in the right place at the right time. Is making sure you're in there and doing that. But you can't force it. You can't make shit happen. And, I'd like to think that I got where I am through sheer hard work and talent. And yes, there was definitely a lot of hard work and maybe a little bit of talent, but most of it was just sheer fucking luck. And I keep reminding myself all the time, and so
Yeah. I think, something you said earlier as well that really resonated was talking about how each one of you in the Cassandra complex also has different skill sets that
mhm.
has been able to like help you guys along the way.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
I think
because
it's really important to
yeah,
develop those skill sets. And at least, even though I'm not our agent, if I have agents that work for us, I know how the process works. So, and that's important. I need to be able to know, I do all their tour books. I mean, our band, and we have a full project management system that runs. Our band runs on a project management system. Everything's written, is stored online. We have all the dates mapped out. We have all the schedules mapped out. We have the handbooks for our equipment that's held online. Everything. And that's really important. I mean, don't think if you want to do this, do it properly. This is a business. This is my workplace. This is my livelihood. This is my business. It's a business, and you have to be able to do two things. You have to be able to say, on this hand, I'm this authentic, passionate musician who does this for the love of it. And on the other hand, you have to say, I'm also a businessman running a business, and I need to eat. And so I need to make this stuff work. I need to make it work right. And so one of the things we do is we make sure that everybody in the band understands both those things and has their job to do on both aspects. Because otherwise, forget it. Unless you want to throw out 10% here, 15% here, 20% here, whatever, and everybody you work with takes their percentage before you get paid. You're the last person who will ever get paid. Everybody else's percentage comes first. So, and when you make a record, you don't normally get paid for like 18 months. It takes that long. You got to spend the money, the time, the energy, and you got to, if you're pressing your own CDs, you got to pay for the CD first. You got to pay for the recording and the equipment first. Then you got to go out there and you got to sell it, and you got to pay somebody to sell it for you. You got to give the percentage to the stores or to the merchandising person. They get their money first, and eventually you'll get the money back. But it may take as long as 18 months. So how are you
yeah,
going to eat for 18 months? These are the questions you got to ask yourself.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's something I've thought about. It's some of the music that is coming out of us is stuff we wrote 5 years ago, right?
Mm,
So
right,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Hmm.
Like it's when you put out music, it's a representation of a chapter in your life, but from the past. Um,
Right, absolutely. The
yeah,
moment it
yeah,
comes out, it's already obsolete, effectively. I mean, you're still the same
yeah,
person, but yeah, it's what you wear, not what you are. And yeah, and
yeah.
I've got songs sitting in my hard drive for the next record. And some of those I wrote 5 years ago, yeah, or started writing 5 years ago, and still haven't quite finished yet. Uh, which reminds me, I really should. But yeah, but that's a really good point.
Yeah, it is another form of time travel, I think.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. And then there's the moment when you are sharing the music live, and it becomes a whole different thing entirely.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
when
but
you were talking,
nothing in the world beats that moment, though.
no, not at all. When you
Hmm.
were sharing about how you don't like sharing your process, I think it's interesting when you are sharing out a song live, how it takes on a whole different meaning to other
Hmm.
ears,
Yes.
right? Yeah,
It's only finished when they hear it, is the way I look at it. You know, that sort of completes the loop, the emotional loop. Um,
absolutely. Yeah. I feel like in those moments, then sometimes it's like you make a discovery where you're like, wow, I didn't know that's what that meant.
yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Yeah, I think it's such a powerful thing. And I mean, like you were saying as well, about how you were like, don't like doing don't be in a band, don't do the album. But if you choose to, like, if you, well, if you're called to do it, I suppose,
Hmm.
for lack of a better term, if that's just
Yeah. I
something
mean,
you have to do.
I totally get that. If you're
Yeah.
called to do it, yes, I get that. And for me, it very much feels that way. The moment my foot hits the stage, I'm just transfigured into something beyond my normal self. And I think you understand that. Um, and yeah, I do feel that this is what I do. This is my natural state of being, as it were. And this is what I was born to do. And it feel very much and I think anyone who's seen us live will gets that the moment I step on that stage, that's me. That's me in my natural element. On the other hand, I also have to keep reminding myself I may just be completely deranged. That's maybe just me being some narcissistic asshole thinking, "Hey, look at me, I'm a rock star," uh, and um, and so you've got to continually, you know. I remember like I was doing a music artist conference once. I was moderating a panel at this, and there were loads and loads of musicians there, and there were some people from record companies and agencies and stuff that were talking, and someone said in the audience, like, when you're starting out as a musician, what's the most important thing you should know? And someone in the panel said, well, it's really important to believe in yourself. You got to believe in yourself. You got to have strong self-belief, blah, blah, blah. And everyone else said, yeah, yeah, yeah. And everyone nodded along. And then it got to me and I said, that's the biggest pile of bullshit I've ever heard in my life. And they were like, what do you mean? I said, well, look, I've worked with a lot of very well-known artists, and they all have one thing in common, and that is a crippling sense of self-doubt. You talk to any great artist and they all think they're fucking useless. Like, and that's what drives us forward. What drives me forward is not like, look at me, I'm a great rock star. What drives me forward is thinking, shit, that stuff I did was just not good enough. I need to do better than that. I've got to, I can do, this is like, yeah, that song was good. Yeah, okay. But it still didn't quite get what I needed to do. And that sense of needing to be better, of needing to be stronger and to do better is what drives me along, Not like, look at me, I'm fabulous. Yeah, you do need to have a bit of that because sometimes when you're at 2 o'clock in the morning when you're laying in your bed going, why am I bothering? It's important to think, well, I can do this. But more importantly, I think it is to say, like, well, I can do this better. I can be better. I can do better. I can create something more. And that, I think, is what drives a lot of artists along.
Absolutely. It's interesting. This is in line with what a beautiful question from Pete Russo. Thank you for your question. Is asking, when you see songs like that, do you look at them like a snapshot of where you were when you wrote them, or do you feel like you might want to update them to where you are now?
Oh, what a fabulous question. That's a fantastic question. Um, yes is the answer to that. Both. Actually, I was just listening last night. I went to see the Gang of Four, one of my all-time favorite bands. They played here in LA, and I was just listening to an album called "Return the Gift." Was when the Gang of Four they broke up after their first records, and they got back together again, and they re-recorded their early hits, and completely re-recorded and did an album called "Return the Gift," which was all those early hits redone, and it's a brilliant record because they had more money, better technology, and many years of experience in between. And so, like on the last tour we did, because it was our 40th anniversary, we did a lot of the very early songs. We wanted to make it very much a celebration of who we were in our history. But so we went through all the old songs and redid them from scratch. And in fact, we did an album. The last album we put out was called Death and Sex, which was actually a re-recorded version of a previous album, which is called Sex and Death. See what we did there? We re-recorded all those songs because when we did the original, because I was Cop International wanted to put the original record out, and I was remastering it, and all the way through, I'm going, "Oh my God, that sucks! Oh God, my voice sounds terrible there, and that drum sound isn't quite right, or whatever." So in the end, rather than remaster it, I said, "Fuck it, we'll just re-record it from scratch." So we re-recorded the whole album, or nearly the whole album, and put it out again as a new recording. And in my opinion, much better recording. And so we're continually re-examining our own history and continually trying to make it better. And so when we did the last tour, we did all the old songs completely newly arranged. Um, a lot of the times, like I say, we got the original synthesizers, the original drum machines back. But a lot of the cases, we redid them completely with the knowledge and the technology we have now. Because now I have everything at my fingertips. Before it was just two kids in a basement with stuff we got in a junk store, which has its own charm and its own importance. But yeah, but now I have more information and more resources, but hopefully still have the same emotions inside. I can still tap into those. And sometimes when I'm playing those songs live, like really old songs, I'll be standing on the stage and I'll remember the moment. I still remember the moment I wrote Moscow, Idaho in 1986. I can still remember that I was sitting on a bench outside a disco. There was a famous nightclub in Leeds called Le Phonographique, which was really the first ever goth club. And Paul and I used to go there every Wednesday night. The very, very, very first ever post-punk goth club. And one night I was waiting for him to turn up, and he was late. So I sat on a bench outside, and I heard the music coming, boom, boom, boom. And I thought, I'm going to write a song that they're going to play in this club. And I sat down and wrote Moscow, Idaho, and I still remember pulling out a notebook and writing the lyrics. And Paul had written the sequencer line earlier that day. I'm still in my head. And I wrote the song, and every time I sing it, I still remember that moment, like it was yesterday. So,
Oh, I think that's beautiful. I think that's beautiful. It's again, it's the time travel snapshot. Like,
absolutely,
yeah,
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 absolutely.
yeah. Wow. I don't know. I love that you can pull inspiration from so many different places. And um I don't know. I know for myself it's always different. Every song is so different, like
Mm,
how it comes about,
sure, and that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah. Well, I was curious, do you ever well, in this particular instance, it sounds like the words came first, right?
Oh, the old question, which comes first, the words or the music? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
I don't
Sometimes
know.
both.
I don't know.
Sometimes
Yeah,
both.
exactly. I mean, I don't know. When people ask me about my process, I always find it very difficult to answer because I still don't quite know where it comes from. It just sort of happens magically. It's in there, and then one day it's in there, and the next day it's out there. And I really don't know what the process is. I don't have a fixed process. I mean, I've got papers and hard drives and full of notes and bits of lyrics and all sorts of stuff. So I'll collect up, like, I'll be laying in my bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, be like, oh, and a little snippet will come in my head, and I will wake up and like write it in my phone or whatever immediately and keep it. And then maybe 5 years later, I'll see it and go, oh yeah, and it'll trigger off something else. Or sometimes we'll just be playing around, we'll have a drum rhythm, or Andy will come have some little guitar part or something, and I'll start singing. Oh yeah, and then we and maybe we'll write a verse or a chorus or whatever, and then I'll go, oh yeah, I can, and or so, or something, the band will come up with, or we'll all come up with a whole piece of music with no lyric, and then I'll go away and just listen to it and just go da 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 da, and then it'll trigger off some associations or feelings, and the words will start to come, and they'll make sense in the context of the music. I don't know. It really could be any of these and all of those things.
Yeah.
It's very much an organic process, I think, in that sense.
I think that's part of the fun.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a discovery, I think, every time.
Yeah, but it's a very magical process in that, like I say, one day it's not there and the next day it's a song, and something happens in between, but I'm still not entirely sure what that thing is. I mean, there's processes like playing the music or whatever, but there's just some indefinable something, that ineffable thing that happens that makes it into something, a piece of art,
Yeah, absolutely. It's always fun for us when we have like external inspiration, like when we collaborate with other artists in different
Sure.
mediums. And then they give you the impetus where they're like, here's the concept, go.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, like when it comes organically within yourself or within the band, it is, yeah, something that's a little bit difficult to pinpoint. But yeah, we also do our share of jamming, which I find a lot of joy in. So
Well, we never jam because we're shit.
I think you're a little better than that. I had a difficulty myself when I first started jamming because I came from a classical background. And so I didn't know how to jam.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've worked a lot of classical musicians in the past, and they're always like completely like they're like a deer caught in headlights when they see your process in the studio. Like, what?
Totally. Yeah. It takes some getting used to, where you're like, oh, so you just play it and you just feel it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you again for taking the time to chat with me and to share your perspective and your inspiration. Really, truly inspiring. You have such a depth to all the things that you've created.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that very much. It's a real pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, and I wanted to say thank you as well to everyone that has been chiming in and asking questions and sharing your perspective as well. It's such a joy to be a part of the live music community. Unwritten Rules of the Road is all about that, and it's something where, like you were talking about earlier, like how technology has made it possible for other people to be able to create. Um, and I think it's one of those things where it's like it helps, I think, when you hear other people share their history and their perspective, to know like, hey, it's possible. Like, I might not know what I'm doing, but somehow you will figure it out along the way, right? So, yeah. So yeah, thank you so much again, Rodney, for your time. And really looking forward to hearing more Cassandra Complex. Hopefully I will get to see you live here in the States, but maybe
I'm not so sure
elsewhere.
about that. We will see if we play the States again, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully. I think we're planning on going back on tour again in the fall of next year, I think is currently the plan. I've just been asked to do a festival earlier next year, but I'm not sure we're going. Well, we said we were going to take a lot of time off just to so we can catch up with the recording and do real life stuff. But yeah, hopefully back on tour in about a year and a bit, maybe, and hopefully some records before then. So.
It is kind of funny how you make these plans and then life has a funny way of tangenting, right? Where you're
Mm.
like taking some time just to make the album and then you end up, in a different spot.
Well, that's also true. I mean, yeah, I mean, one of the things I don't think a lot of people realize is like when you're doing these big festivals and you're whatever, you're booking the shows over a year in advance,
Yeah.
usually a year to 18 months in advance. So we're now starting to book shows for fall of next year. That's how far ahead we have to think. So yeah, it's like my head is full of like plans for the next 2 years or more
Yeah.
already. So anyway.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time.
No, thank you very much indeed. And thanks for watching, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Sending much love, and we will see